Every story about zombies starts with one infected person. But how does it spiral from that into a planet full of walking corpses? Today we're breaking it down step by step, from the first bite to the last breath of civilization. These are the 7 levels of zombie outbreaks, from patient 0 to extinction. Level 1. It always starts small. One unlucky person gets infected, either through a bite, a lab accident, a contaminated animal, or a virus that finally figures out how to jump from animal to human. On paper, this looks like a medical curiosity. In reality, it's a lit fuse. At this stage, the world doesn't even know what's happening. The infected person can still talk, text, buy coffee, ride the subway, and joke about feeling off and taking paid time away from work. They can go through airports, schools, hospitals, crowded churches, or a workplace with 300 employees, and no one would treat them like a biohazard, because they would still mostly look normal. This is what makes level 1 so dangerous. It looks harmless. Early infections are hard to catch. Symptoms can look like the flu, rabies, drug intoxication, or a psychiatric break. So doctors go through the usual checklist, which burns precious time. Families try to keep it private because no one wants their loved ones stand up on the news. The silence gives the infection time to move. Containment is technically possible here, if the first cases are identified fast. Health agencies can trace contacts, quarantine households, and shut down a few locations. So you get a short list of exposed people. You isolate them, and the outbreak ends quietly. No apocalypse, no burned cities, no long videos like this one. But human denial is undefeated. The first doctor might misdiagnose it, and the first relative might say he's just stressed. Then you get a second case in another district, and no one realizes that it's linked to the first. This is how the virus gets a head start. Level 2 Local Containment Failure. At this point, hospitals start to overflow. Not because there's millions of zombies yet, but because the system was already at 80% capacity on a normal Tuesday. Add in a wave of violent bite-related injuries, and suddenly the ER hallways are full. Nurses are quitting mid-shift, and administrators are calling it a mass casualty event. Law enforcement start responding to calls about deranged or drugged civilians who will not go down. Officers fire. The suspects keep moving. The body doesn't respond the way a normal human body should. And now you get your first viral footage of cops shooting someone in the head in broad daylight. Social media is flooded with shaky phone videos. Half of them real, half of them people faking attacks for clout, which makes it even harder for authorities to figure out what's actually happening. So local officials do the only thing they can do. They impose local lockdowns. They close off city blocks, lock down hospital wings, quarantine an apartment building, maybe even shut the whole city down. But fear moves faster than pathogens. People see roadblocks in hazmat suits, and they start running, which is exactly what you do not want in a zombie outbreak. Every roadblock, every press conference, every isolated incident fuels panic. The public hears it's contained, but then they see helicopters, body bags, and cops in respirators. The gap between what the government says and what the people see is what causes the first wave of mass flight. That flight spreads the infection. By the time officials realize it isn't isolated, entire emergency response teams are already exposed. EMTs get bitten while doing CPR. Nurses get scratched because they're trying to restrain a patient without armor. Patrol officers arrest an infected person and bring them into a crowded station. The very people sent to stop the outbreak become the vector for it. At this point, small-scale military responses start to begin. National Guard platoons, hazmat crews, and the CDC strike teams to try to secure the obvious choke points first. They move to hospitals, airports, train hubs, water treatment facilities, and police stations. They start setting up decontamination tents, start shooting the ones that'll not stay down, and try to separate the infected from the healthy. They're often late. They're reacting to yesterday's outbreak, not today's. Zombies multiply in geometric waves. 1 becomes 10, 10 become 100, 100 becomes an entire district. Once that happens, you're not a medical emergency anymore. You're in the opening phase of urban collapse. Level 3 City Collapse. When a city collapses, it's not just because of zombies, it's because of the people. Zombies trigger the panic, people finish the job. Cities are built to function with constant deliveries, active power, working sanitation, and thousands of people doing their jobs on time. Once that flow stops, the whole thing seizes up, and this can happen within hours, not weeks. Evacuation orders sound good on paper, but in real life they create instant gridlocks. Highways clog, on-ramps freeze, and people ditch their cars when traffic will not move. Gas stations run dry in a single afternoon. Power plants and substations go unmanned because the workers are trying to save their own families. Police departments, 911 dispatch, and hospitals all break down within 24 to 48 hours. Not because they don't care, but because their staff is either infected, exhausted, or gone. What you'll start to see is the visual language of a dying city. Fires on the skyline that no fire crew is coming to put out. Sirens that fade, not because the danger is gone, but because there's no responders left. Streets littered with abandoned cars, some crashed, some with doors still open, apartment windows smashed out, supermarkets stripped bare. This is what urban collapse actually looks like. The undead dominate population centers first. Anywhere dense, vertical or confined become a death trap. Downtown districts, subway tunnels, hospitals, nursing homes, stadiums, and mall parking structures all turn into holding pens for the infected. People try to flee through the same stairwells, the same tunnels, the same bridges, and they run straight into the growing hordes. And the military will try to stabilize the city with airstrikes, artillery on key intersections, or hard quarantine perimeters around the worst zones. They might blow bridges, block tunnels, or designate certain districts as no-go zones, but it's already too late. Once civilians start self-evacuating in random directions, you cannot track the outbreak. Refugees fleeing the city carry the infection to nearby suburbs, rural towns, and highway rest stops. Every car that slips past a checkpoint is a new cluster. In my Country vs. Zombies series, I always have comments saying the zombies can't cross the country. And maybe they're right, but the zombies don't have to, the people do. They carry the virus for the zombies. At this point, level 3 is the real turning point. Containment has failed. The virus is mobile, carried by civilians, supply trucks, and panicked families. From here on, the outbreak is not a city problem, it's a national problem, and the clock is ticking. Level 4, nationwide quarantine. Now entire borders close. Not just airports doing extra screening, but full national shutdowns. Trains, ferries, major highways, even inter-province or interstate travel gets restricted. Martial law is declared so the other orders can be enforced without waiting for court or local approval. Curfews, roadblocks, and forced evacuations become routine. You'll start to hear phrases like mandatory relocation, containment corridor, and authorized travel only. Airports will shut down or switch to military and medical flights only. Commercial air traffic basically stops. The internet fills with rumors, fake coordinates for safe zones, and edited videos of politicians saying things they never said. At this point, bad intel will become its own infection. The government might still believe they can contain it, but the supply chain is already breaking. Food distribution depends on trucks, drivers, fuel, and safe roads. If any one of those is gone, shelves are empty. Fuel distribution depends on refineries, transports, and secure depots. Once those depots are looted or abandoned, fuel becomes regional instead of national. The military will prioritize strategic infrastructure, which means power grids, nuclear plants, dams, comm hubs, and water systems. Those sites get soldiers, armor, and air support. Everything else, including suburbs and small towns, get a radio message to shelter in place. Protecting the backbone of the country means leaving a lot of civilians to fend for themselves. At this level, survival becomes regional. You survive if you live in an area with food, water, and organized people. If you're not self-sufficient, or if you live near a major population center that is still being flooded with refugees, you're already on borrowed time. Level 5, global spread. International borders crumble. Even with most routes suspended, cargo flights unintentionally move infected passengers between hubs before everything finally grounds. Cargo ships drift into ports with dead crews, and once the cranes unload those containers, it spreads to a new continent overnight. Air travel, shipping routes, and refugee flow pushes the virus everywhere. Coastal cities are hit first because they trade the most. High population density and endless travel make them the perfect landing zone for the infected. Island nations last a little longer, but only barely. All it takes is one contaminated ship docking for supplies or one infected pilot to break the quarantine, and then the chain reaction starts again. Governments start closing airspace, but they can't stop cargo planes still trying to deliver medicine, food, or weapons. Satellite images show glowing city grids going dark, one coastline at a time. By the time the First Nation declares total collapse, others are already burning. The World Health Organization stops functioning entirely. Conflicting reports, government censorship, and deliberate misinformation turn the global response into chaos. Countries accuse one another of weaponizing the virus. Foreign aid convoys are hijacked or bombed out of paranoia. The United Nations stop meeting altogether. Humanity no longer cooperates, and everything starts to fragment. Nuclear power quietly activates scorched earth protocols. Some start targeting their own major cities to prevent the undead swarms from overrunning missile silos, reactors, or classified facilities. The radiation zones become new wastelands, killing as many survivors as the infection itself. By now, global population exceeds 70%, and food production has collapsed almost everywhere. Communication networks go offline. Internet traffic drops to fragments. Most survivors rely on shortwave radios, which only makes it clear how widespread the destruction really is. The infection is now universal. Every continent, every ocean route, every human cluster. There is no containment left. Level 6, societal breakdown. Governments dissolve. There is no central authority, no federal response, no international aid. What's left are the military fragments into regional forces, private security remnants, and straight-up warlord groups that control territories in exchange for food and protection. Some disciplined units stay together and turn it into a fortified survivor enclave. Others go rogue. Infrastructure stops completely. No power unless you can generate it yourself. No running water unless you can pump it. No factories, no organized farming, no regular field deliveries. Locations that depended on outside import become unlivable. Humanity drops back to village logic. You eat what you can grow, hunt, or take. Zombies still dominate urban centers because there's so many corpses concentrated there. What living people are left scatter into rural zones. Mountains, forests, and small towns where they can actually defend a perimeter. Farms become miniature forts. Highway overpasses become ambush points. Anyone with a well or a water tower become important, or a valuable target. This is when you start to see the worst version of people. Scavenger bands that strip everything of value, cannibal tribes in areas where food ran out months ago, isolated compounds that shoot first because they have been attacked too many times. Trade will still exist, but it'll be risky. Every negotiation can turn into a raid. Infection rates finally stabilize. Not because humanity won, but because there's fewer people left to infect. The virus runs out of fresh bodies. But the undead do not stop moving. They migrate out of empty cities. They follow sound, light, and seasonal temperature. Some are falling apart. Some are half frozen, some are getting more dangerous because they have formed massive herds. At this point, it's not about surviving the outbreak. The outbreak already won. It's about surviving what's left of humanity, which is angry, hungry, and armed. Level 7, Extinction. The final level. Civilization is gone. No governments, no economies, no communication. Nature begins reclaiming what humanity built. Vines cover skyscrapers, rivers break through highways, and forests consume suburbs. Cities turn into skeletons of concrete and rust. Most zombies have decayed to bone and sinew, but the world they left behind no longer belongs to us. Nuclear plants melted down decades ago, contaminating entire regions. Ecosystems collapse under the weight of extinction events. Without human maintenance, dams burst, wildfires burn unchecked, and new species evolve to fill the gaps left behind. The planet keeps going, just without us. The remaining survivors are scattered across wastelands that barely resemble Earth. Radiation, hunger, and disease have taken their toll. Generations of malnutrition leave people frail and infertile. Small tribes wander between ruins, trading scavenged metal and clean water. Some camps still cling to rituals, religions, or stories of the world before, but each generation remembers less. The undead are fading, but not gone. Some lie frozen in the mountain passes. Some shamble through irradiated plains. The few that remain are more relic than threat, reminders of how it all started. Ironically, the world that once fought so hard to stop them is now shaped by their aftermath. Every human camp lives on the edge of extinction. One broken water filter, one infected wound, one storm, an entire group disappears. There are no resupplies coming, no rescue missions, no civilizations waiting to rebuild. The flame of humanity flickers one last time, in scattered pockets of life slowly dimming. In the end, the undead may finally fade, but so does everything that made us human. Our art, our empathy, our arrogance, our cities, all erased by the same chain reaction we started. Every zombie apocalypse starts with one infection, one failure to act, one lie told on the news. The virus isn't the problem, we are, and we always have been. So next time someone coughs on a crowded train, remember, civilization only survives as long as we do. Alright guys, if you made it to the end, you guys are the real MVPs here and I appreciate that very much. And don't forget, I have a Discord community if you're interested in making friends and talking about all things zombies.